Welcome to Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests bring you insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for soul growth. Come journey with us through astrology's energetic cycles and get ready to understand your path in the cosmic roots of the stars.
Hello, everybody. I think, David, do you have, am I on? Okay, I guess I'm on. And yes, thank you very much. You know, that is like the retrograde right now. We have Mercury in retrograde. In fact, the outer planets are in retrograde. The last time this particular panel was on was 5 months ago when we were just ingressing about to with the planets into their new signs. Well, the tide is turning in that early degree and they're beginning to shift back. As a result, everybody's experiencing enormous, when I say everybody, perhaps you are not, but truly it appears that the climate of the political, personal landscape is constantly shifting in many ways with so many dynamic patterns in the cosmic sky. We're focusing on one called a kite. And kites sail, right? You have to work at it, though. You got to work with that wind. This one happens to be in air with some fire planets, so it could spark off. And it's an amazing dynamic relationship that we're having. And we'll find out more about it with U.S. Global Currents. We're ready now.
Examining significant United States domestic politics and foreign affairs through the astrological perspective of the celestial map of the sky to understand the impact on each individual around the globe, this is your U.S. Global Currents panel.
I'm Sue Rose Minahan, founder of Talk Cosmos since 2018. I'm an evolutionary astrologer, consultant, speaker, writer, vibrational astrology student, Dwarf Planet University graduate, Kepler Astrology Toastmasters Club charter member. I have a fine arts music degree plus a certificate in jazz. I'm an artist, musician, and certified color energy life coach. Especially, I love mythology and esoteric philosophies.
I'm Robert Pizzetti, professional consulting astrologer and the visionary behind Deep Earth Astrology and the Deep Earth Astrology Tarot, a divination tool and teaching aid that integrates astrology, herbalism, and natural reverence. I specialize in vibrational and psychological techniques and infuse my practice with a deep connection to nature's spirituality. I'm currently the Grand Pendragon in the Ancient Order of Druids in America and the director of the Magus Gathering in Gore, Virginia.
I'm Justin Crockett-Elzy, an archetypal Jyotish astrologer, yoga and meditation teacher, and author. I combine both Western ancient astrology and modern psychological astrology with Eastern Vedic astrology, and I specialize in predictive, electional, and karmic astrology for individuals and couples. I also do in-depth astrological research into arcane astrological concepts, focusing on the mystical, occult side of astrology.
Rock musician Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention says, a mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not open.
Hello.
Hello. I thought there was a tag to that, but at any rate, that works just great. It's so good to see you both.
Yes, good to see you too.
Good to be here.
I know. And, you know, because this isn't a monthly panel, when the time comes, it's just like life. It's how do we open our conversations? And I love the fact that we're looking at the energy, this, whether it's a parachute or a kite, you know, the outer planets are really connecting in a trine for a long time, a mini trine. And now with the planets entering Libra, we're sailing off into new horizons. Okay, well, let's start. If we could get the slides up there for a moment. Okay, we will begin. And we have Justin Crockett-Elzy, and you can find him at his YouTube channel, Astrological Yogi, or his online website. And Rob Passetti is deepearthastrology.com. And he has lots coming forward, which we'll find out at the halftime. And myself, Talk Cosmos. Well, there are these right in this month, as we're talking, as of yesterday, in the last couple of days, these two kites where Saturn and Neptune that have conjunct, not exactly until next year. They're going to be conjunct 5 various times, but actually they're going to be, I'm skipping in my brain. I apologize because I'm thinking of the trine, but their conjunction will be in February. Exact, but we're in this slow orb going to it. So on the 8th, Mars in Libra, and I'll read this off quickly only for the podcast people, but August 8th, it was at 1 degree, 20 minutes Libra, and it was opposite Saturn in Aries. And then on the 9th, there was Aquarius full moon at 17 degrees Aquarius, and just within a few hours, less than a day, on that August 9th, Mars at 1 degree 50, half a degree later, was opposite Neptune. Shall we talk about a kite? It's a big energy. It has, it has that trine. There's examples coming after this, but this is part of the whole discussion is like, what is this that we're experiencing? Why does it even matter? Yes, it has a grand trine. That's where the energy wants to flow, and it will flow. And vibrational astrology and its research discovers that it's not such just an easy peasy thing. It does if it works, and if it doesn't, by gosh, it's going to make sure it works. So there's that. But with this kite, which means outside of its element, which happens to be air now, these two planets in fire, and I'll have a diagram to show it because there's sextile in fire. So as you know, fire and air love each other. They feed off each other. Wind can blow a fire out, but usually once those embers begin, as we see in the fires across the globe, it just picks up and moves. So it's very strong. Silence is golden.
Well, I didn't know if you were asking a question or something, so I was waiting for the next slide. So
no.
I would just say that, when it comes to trines, normally, a lot of people are going to talk to them in a very positive way because it's an easy flow of energy, triangulation between 3 astrological bodies. However, it can also, that energy is actually neutral. So a trine can be very negative or very positive. It's how that energy is used because it's very neutral. It's just kind of an open pipeline. So that open pipeline between those 3 planets can be for more dark or for more light. It depends on how you use that.
Yeah, and when I look at a kite pattern, I'm looking at a gift that is activated by tension. There is this flowing ability within it, but it is not. It's activated by the circuit between the opposition, and that is what makes it really an interesting energy and how we can manifest a gift from something that is really kind of chaotic.
Yes, and the planets matter, don't they? We'll look at that in just a change. I was reading everything's changing, but in a moment. I did a little research, wondering always what more can you learn as you're trying to discuss this. And there is an astrologer there in Seattle, and I think I wrote his name down, Stephen Schroer, not someone I personally am aware of, but part of the Aquarian Age Journal. But I liked how he presented the power of a grand trine, and he relates it more in an esoteric sense. But the generation of power, the concentration and distribution of power. So yes, it's all, as I'm noting here on the slide, it's a free will. But yes, it is this paradox of the opposition, such as you say. How do you really manifest this thing? Sailing a kite, you have to work with the wind. It's it can dive down. Yeah. So I like this idea.
And an opposition, is not actually an easy flow of energy. An opposition is one they're tugging against each other. So there's a back and forth. It can be a seesaw effect with an opposition. So it's definitely something you have to work with.
Yeah, give a little, take a little. I guess that's what Libra would say. Mars says, no, I'm leading onward. Are you going to come? At any rate, let's see. This here is a good representation. It's a diagram, and it shows with the 4 points. There could be more planets, but generally it's 4 points. And this is the perfect example where the ABC, again, is 120 degrees. That's a trine. Is for within the circle of that flow. And then the focal planets, as we call it in the kite, represented by D here, is a sextile, 60 degrees, which is half of it. And so that would be, and then of course the opposition. I didn't draw the red line, but that would be an opposition. And there's ideas that it has tremendous ability to really reach an epiphany of, I don't know if it's an epiphany, but it might be, because if you're going to soar to great heights, elevate, that's a pattern that would be a sense of freedom, perhaps. So there's hope there, I suppose, because it as we see it, this is a really metamorphosis of change, and that the experience of that isn't just loop-de-doo, like, oh boy, it's like, oh dear, here we go. So, and speak,
this chart is fascinating to me. I mean, I think that one of the things that because we've been going through this Saturn Neptune conjunction for a little while now, and I think one of the things that I've thought about is a lot of people are treating it almost like an opposition in so many ways, because Saturn seeks to define, stabilize, set boundaries, and Neptune blurs those boundaries and kind of opens the self to the infinite, to the upper regions. So this is a conjunction. Saturn may give form to Neptune's dreams, but Neptune may also dissolve Saturn's, rigid structures. And while Mars is in Libra, it's in detriment. But, it is receiving that Aries energy of its domicile from this conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. So I don't really find this to be as impotent a Libra situation for Mars as it would be if it wasn't getting empowered by that Aries energy, and it negates some of that weakness. Mars in Libra can not make a decision about how to move forward. It can be a little passive in situations. It can be more about people pleasing. But by the reception of the Aries energy, it turns that Libra into more of a sense of justice than it does of just people pleasing and relationships. I think that we really, because keep in mind that Saturn is exalted in Libra, and that is where we see that kind of justice aspect coming. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important to realize that actually a Mars Saturn aspects are not easy. No. In general, whether they're conjunct, opposition, trine, sextile, they're not easy. And because Mars represents action and effort and forward movement, and in, like you said, decision making could be that, especially in Libra, not making a decision, and it wants to make a balanced decision. Mars in Libra wants to make a balanced, right decision. It's about perfection there, especially in those first degrees. There's a perfectionism if we look in the Sabian symbols, and when it's opposite Saturn, which represents limitations, karma, discipline, it means that if we're going to want to start something right now, we are being challenged to maybe take a more conservative view, or to look at what obstacles and challenges are there. So Saturn, I see here, helps Mars grow by saying, wait a second there, young man, you're going to need to look at this before you go forward with this, since we look at Mars as maybe younger and Saturn is the older one. Now, if we go deeper, and this is where I'd be curious to think about your all's concepts, We're talking about Aries and Libra. And so there is this dichotomy, and Sue brought it up kind of in our 4 discussions before we came on about relationships. And I've always seen that opposition between self with the Aries and Libra with the relationships. And we're seeing this big thing happen in the collective about how are we valuing individuals. And Saturn in Aries wants to only focus on itself. I want to take care of us and ourself. And there's really sort of wall there that Saturn in Aries could wall itself off and only focus on its own individual self. And I think we see that in the collective. So I think this is really a challenging aspect of kind of representing of how we're looking at relationships in the collective. And are we focused only on ourselves, which is Saturn, or are we trying to bring some sense of balance and harmony with relationships with the Mars and Libra?
Beautifully expressed, because in relationships, of course, that Mars wants to ask Libra, hey, what's going on? I've got these 2 guys over there and are 2 gals, whichever, but these energies that are asking me, and I'm foraging forward, but I want balance, such as you're expressing. And Libra is this whole myriad of other collected energies, because she's, or he, looking at the moon, meaning let's get some protection about this. And how are we does that nurture you? Like, what's your real values? And of course, it expands beyond that. In this case, well, the moon always moves fast, and so it translates that light. But it goes into Gemini, into the thought process. So it's very involved. And that's why I think Mars is having quite a dilemma making the choices, because it's getting a lot of input, how to consider the justness to the self that also gives to the other, because it wants to have that relationship with the other, but yet it must learn to be true and not project and be a people pleaser and forgetting itself. It's like, why are we alive? It's because we're going to discover and learn and etc. with people and things.
I think one of the most important things to consider with this pattern and, the kite pattern as a whole is that because the mini grand trine here consists of outer planets, we're going to be holding this mini grand trine pattern all the way until about 2028. So any planet that passes through the first 5 or so degrees of Libra is going to be making these kite patterns. So with this mini grand trine, we're seeing this cooperative relationship between the outer planets. Pluto, which wants to destroy and rebirth. We have Uranus, which wants to be the awakener, and then we have the Neptune, which is kind of the spiritual zeitgeist and the upper philosophy. So all of this is going to be affecting the personal planets multiple times over the next few years. And I think that this is really just a turning point in where Mars can go from more of a passive role to an empowered relationship role, where we're moving now forward with a sense of justice, and exactly what Justin said, considering what the individual is versus the other, and taking a more active and responsible role with that Saturn there in handling that.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's true. Just to bring another layer, some people might look at it. Well, the point is Saturn, Aquarius, which the moon's ruled. Is the moon ruled? Yeah, the moon's ruled by Aquarius. I messed up there. It wasn't Gemini at all. So, but it's co-ruled by Uranus and Saturn. And if you look at rulership, the reason why am I even looking at this? Why do I care? Well, it's because it's interesting to see that it could represent, if we look at, because change always is the old going to the new. It's the present moment, but it's that dichotomy between those two energies. And traditionally with Saturn, there's a Mars loop. It goes from Mars to Venus to the moon back to Mars, and there's this loop that says action, what are my values, how do I nurture, then back to Saturn that says, hey, what's it really, what is the definition, what's really essential here? Okay, let's act on that and go back to Mars, and it goes around and around. But if we look at Uranus, looking at forward with modern view, that's how I'm interpreting these two rulerships always. It's ruled by Gemini, and it's thinking more. It's not so much on the feeling, sensory, emotional part, but it's thinking more in Mercury, and it's ruled by the sun, and the sun just rests there. It's in Leo right now, and the sun says, hey, this is what we're going to manifest, and this is how we're going to do it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Can I point out one thing about the whole aspect that you mentioned before about the past? And the saving symbols do talk about the past. And I realized earlier on when I was looking at this pattern, Saturn with Neptune is bringing in fruits from the past. It's bringing up past issues in the collective that we haven't dealt with yet, whether it's racism and so on and so forth. And so this is a cycle. When Saturn hits that Saturn, that karma, the old man brings in stuff from the past with the Neptune. We're dealing with these outer planets, with Saturn and Neptune brings in issues from the past, but then Pluto and Uranus are there just saying, okay, how are we going to react to those fruits from the past this time? We're getting a second chance here with Saturn on Neptune. How do we react now to this recycling? We're seeing in the collective authoritarianism come up again, like in World War II. Saturn was in Aries then. How are we reacting this time around? How are we reacting this time around with those relationships? And Pluto and Uranus, to your point there, are helping us think and reevaluate this cycle this time around.
Isn't that, I like this. It just parallels with the whole energy, it supports is what I'm trying to say, with Mercury being retrograde. I mean, if you look at all the little red signs there, as far as the people, Saturn, Neptune, they're retrograde. Pluto's retrograde, and Uranus will be further on. Well, that is, I brought this slide up because of all the slides as I animated, this is as of yesterday, the 9th, the same pattern that we looked at, but look how powerful this is. It has a mystic rectangle. It's really launching. It has what they call double wings or angel wings, however you want to look at it, with Thales points, all these patterns that we kind of rotate around, but it has 5 sextile connections of a 6-pointed star. It's just dynamite.
I think that's really a good way to put it as well. Is this chart, it feels like it's unresolved because it's missing something, and that kite with Mercury and Leo as the focal point to that Pluto opposition. I mean, I think voices are kind of going to be demanding to be heard in response to the changes that Pluto is making. One of the big issues with Mercury retrograde in Leo is that it's not going to feel like it's heard. It's going to be loud until it is heard. There is a diffusion of communication now that we're seeing in the political world. It's not just us versus them or one side or the other. We're starting to see this dissemination of multiple opinions going on right now, where there's a lot of voices that want to be heard. There are a lot of people who are very supportive of things, who, after new information has come out, are maybe not as supportive of things. A good example of that is, I found myself, watching a political show that I necessarily wouldn't have agreed with in the past, but I thought that the information was interesting, and it was a voice that I haven't heard before. And the mystic rectangle is really cool because, I think that the mystic rectangle represents an outer composure that is masking some kind of hidden tension. And that holding space there, especially we're talking about Mars in Libra that is, kind of empowered by this Saturn Neptune, the Mercury, retrograde Mercury in Leo voices kind of shouting for dominance. Then, of course, we have the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is, structure and the dissolution of it. And then finally that Pluto there that just, it wants to change how we view science. It wants to change how we view society. So you put that all into the mix with those two kites. And now you're seeing that, Mars and Libra, and Mercury with the Leo retrograde, it's voices shouting about justice right now.
Yeah, and I just realized there's 3 kites, 3 points. There's Mercury, Uranus, and then Saturn, Neptune that are all like in this collaborative thing. Whoa. Yep. Justin, did you want, or should we go to our last slide?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I agree.
Just the last few minutes before we take our wonderful little break, I thought, okay, this is U.S. global currents. What's happening in the meantime to the U.S. chart? Well, as we can see, what we're experiencing is getting motivated. The Mercury, our thinking about our North Node, our destiny of how we're manifesting, part of these voices. I guess that's how to look at this. And also Venus and Jupiter are really still in this echo of the same synodic cycle, or phase cycle, not synodic, but phase cycle as our natal Venus and Jupiter. So that's always an emphasis, like, yeah, this is another powerful point. And it is, because they're all in Cancer, conjunct, especially Jupiter with our sun. So it's, the whole thing is synergetic.
The funniest thing to me, well, not funny, but just ironic, is that, you have Eris on the ascendant retrograde. You know what I mean? Like it's just the Discordian nature of our structures. And then we have, Mars on the MC, that call to justice, Mercury on the North Node, voices for who are fighting to decide what is the sacred purpose of the nation. And then, we're also looking at a lunar return as well. I mean,
yes.
Which
the
is
whole
beginning of a new sub-cycle. Both ascendant and the moon are ruled by Saturn as well. So, I mean, there's just so much going on here that is about, it is a new beginning.
It is,
in so many ways.
It shows. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sue.
Oh no, I was going to make a fast thing that says if we come by it legitimately. That's all. It's like
well, and if you look at this chart, it's basically a huge return chart, almost in a way.
Yep.
I mean, like the Pluto, and that Pluto's going to hit the South Node, which, by the way, I think is, I say this on every show, that's the most dynamic thing that's about ready to hit soon, is Pluto on the South Node, U.S. South Node, because that's a huge change at birth, disruption, and values in the second house. But we see the Uranus coming back into place. We see the South Node going over the ninth house. That's just a disruption of the whole judiciary. This is, like you said, like both of you pointed out, this is a reset. This is a return that's huge in this period of time.
And just to add on to what you were saying about Cancer, I think Cancer at a national level means something different than something at a personal level. And I think that Cancer becomes a sign of tribalism when we're talking about greater national, and we're seeing this, we are all so invested in our communities right now and preserving our communities and being the caretaker of our communities. And I think all of this is secondary to that, because that is the conjunction of the benefics, like that is going to be the most nurturing energy that we can find out there right now within the collective.
That's where I am hoping, and we'll just have to take a break here, but I am hoping that with the conjunction that's reaching until February with Saturn and Neptune, that it does break down some of the definitive ideas of that tribal sense. We can begin to see the relationship with others is not so different. And so with all these voices, I'm glad to hear that we're listening. Thank you both. Thank you, Justin Crockett-Elsie. Thank you, Robert J. Passetti. This is Sue, and we'll be back in just a minute. Thanks.
While we take a break from this week's edition of Talk Cosmos, let's take a look at this cycle's archetype. We are currently in the Yang period of Leo, ruled by the solar sun. Having departed from a cycle based on the internal process of emotional attachments requiring security and safety, the energy of Leo externally manifests our legacy through children and artistic creations. As a fixed Yang fire sign that desires to ignite actualization, Leo the lion takes the risk to generously exhibit love and welcome all to share their stage with joyous pleasure for living life.
Talk Cosmos brings insightful conversations to awaken consciousness for the soul growth with hour-long programs. Talk Cosmos weekly programs are also available to watch live on the Talk Cosmos YouTube channel and Facebook page. While you're there, make sure you click the like and subscribe buttons so you get the full Talk Cosmos experience. Or if you'd rather listen to the show archives with audio only, the entire podcast collection since 2018 is available on most podcast carriers. And to find out about upcoming programs, sign up for the newsletter at talkcosmos.com. So grab your coffee, tea, or kombucha and enjoy the show.
This is Martha Norwalk, every Sunday morning beginning at 9 a.m. Thanks in part to the Ananda Institute of Living Yoga, we cover the world of animals. This week, August 17th, it's Behavior Training and Healing Sunday with me, and talk with your human or animal loved ones on this side or the other, and personal readings with Natasha Venter. Hope you can join us and plan to call in with your questions for either one of us. It's Martha Norwalk's Animal World, Sunday morning, 9 a.m. to noon, right here on Alternative Talk, AM 1150.
Want to hear something different from talk radio? Keep your dial on Alternative Talk 1150.
Okay, we are back again, and this is U.S. Global Currents. Our panelists, we just give a brief review here, but Justin Crockett-Elsie can be contacted at his email, justin.elsie@gmail.com, does online readings, and on the YouTube at Astrological Yogi with a whole myriad of shows. Justin, do you have anything else that you want to bring up?
Oh yeah, I the one major thing I have coming up, and it's actually next year. I'll be doing a lunch lecture at UAC on the Sabian symbols next year. So
Nice.
Goody. How beautiful. After OPA's now on UAC. That'll be in September, folks. I think it's September, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. Very good. Excellent. We'll have to add that to your list here. And Rob, I know, you know what we didn't mention is you're with the relationship now with Margaret Gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working at the Center for Relationships and Astrology with Margaret Gray. We got some cool stuff coming up. We got some new classes coming up. This is more of an advanced synastry, certification that you would get. There's 3 levels. There's some great teachers. If you go to Center for Relationships and Astrology.com, or you can find us on Facebook or Instagram. And the new classes will be starting soon. And then we also have Fractal Cosmos coming up.
Yes, and I will bring that up in just half a second.
Yeah.
How's your tarot doing?
It's doing good. It's caught up in a little bit of tariff nonsense right now, but we're dealing with the printing situation, but it's coming along.
Oh, I love the possibility. Very good. Well, I think I put that. Oh, here we are, Fractal Cosmos.
Yeah, I mean, it's in a couple of weeks from now. We've got a great lineup. You can go to fractalcosmos.org to see, what we have. We have a beginner track and we have an advanced track. So if you are just, really interested in learning about what vibrational astrology is really about, getting essentially the first few lessons of vibrational astrology and understanding how that works, you can do that. It's very reasonably priced. David Cochran, Santino Mancuso is there. Linda Berry will be there. Charlene Britter, Dr. Will Morris. We have many presenters, and it's we're very excited. This is now the only vibrational astrology conference in the world.
Yes, I'm excited myself. And we do get recordings. I noticed that because it starts on the East Coast at 9, that would be 3 o'clock here in Hawaii. And I went, okay, maybe we'll see. But it is available, which one can return and listen to, which I'm excited. It's such an expansive art. I mean, astrology form. Very good. Well, for myself, just to review on my YouTube channel, there was Astro Jam, which will be coming up at the end of this month again, and we're going to do the eclipses. So the mystery is involved, like, what are we going to say? What are these planets going to say? It's most exciting. And again, in September, we're in this middle point of the summer's vibrations, which you can check what we had for the solstice, which is still important. And then, of course, with the outer planets, my gosh, Uranus in Gemini with Rick Levine, and then Mars, which actually begins this whole cycle, as we're going to talk about here. Adam Gainsbourg was on. Let's talk about this next. In September, again, Mercury comes in to create a kite with Saturn and Neptune and Uranus. And that will be at 0 degrees, 53 minutes of Libra. And within these 5 days, and the new moon is going to be at the very last degree of Virgo, whereas earlier this month on the 23rd, it's going to be at 0 degrees, and September 21st, it's going to be the last degree. And following that, the next day was the fall equinox. All this is a kite energy, but with these extra dimensions of aspects, and that's why I'm bringing it up. The fall equinox, when the sun actually is at 0 degrees Libra, it also aspects Neptune, and then finally it'll perfect on the 23rd. But this extends between the 15th and the 29th. So that's a 2-week period. It's powerful. There'll be many experiences. Shall I jump on?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we have Mercury. So we've gone from our active driving energy into the mental. Okay, now what?
I did want to point this out in the first chart, but one of the things that's really interesting about all of this is that we have Sedna conjunct Uranus. Sedna is about sacrifice for rebirth. And when you put that Uranian energy of kind of, the chaotic energy, the awakening energy with an energy that wants to kind of have a sacrifice for rebirth state, I think that the peak moments that we have through this period is going to really be defined a lot by these things being extreme and there being an extreme nature to things. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I work a lot with Sedna, and it does have. I agree with your what you're saying about it. It also will have this. It's a very kind of individualistic effect because of the indigenous mythology around this, which is kind of dark, where the father throws his daughter over the side of the canoe. So has a weaning effect, or it pushes us to be separate or wean from everybody else. And so given that when Sedna hits another planet, that concept of being individual or being alone or being separate from something that you wanted to be a part of, because it's hitting Uranus. I think this goes to one of your concepts earlier, where there's a lot of individual voices, right? There's a lot of people that feel that need to express that 1 degree Gemini, my unusual individual voice. So this is going to really accentuating all these individual voices, like you said, that want to be heard. But it's also changing the concepts around the voices. Like you said, there's going to be, we may see this where there was clear lines between conservative and liberal, but it's not anymore. It's going to be intertwined and complex, and the ideas will change with that. But Sedna is going to bring out a lot of individual voices, and it's going to bring out a lot of unusual individuals too, and in the collective. I mean, this almost has a signature of avatars being born that represents some unusual personality being born in the collective that needs to express itself.
And that's why I brought it up before we talked about Mercury, because I think that is we can't just consider that a Uranian influence on Mercury with that trine. We also have to consider Sedna in that, and just like you said, separating from the collective that we may have been a part of.
Yes, it's that deconditioning. Absolutely. That's because I'm very strong with Sedna. I'm extremely love what both of you are saying. I'm sorry. Did you want to?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that I was just going to wrap that up with is that the one thing that is the same about both parties is that both of them are extraordinarily unpopular right now. This isn't like a normal stream where we usually see like once one party falters, the other party's polls go up like this. There is extraordinarily, disapproval polling for both the Democratic and the Republican Party right now. So I could absolutely see all of this, like the collective and the collective experience that this pattern between the outer planets is bringing, is putting us into a more balanced mind frame, fed by that Sedna-Uranus conjunction, where we might actually be able to go back into the collective soup, which Saturn does, because keep in mind, the difference between this chart and the other one is that Saturn is no longer in Aries. It is retrograded back into Pisces, so spiritual authority, and just like Justin said, there's going to be a big opportunity for maybe some weird awakening voices to come out and collect all of the people that are now not happy with anything and are just throwing themselves back into the soup to be finding a new path.
Yeah, these are definite possibilities that you're really expressing. And again, that idea that because it's also the lower octave Mercury of Uranus, but Mercury, as we know, is duality. Regardless, and look at it, it's in Libra. It's going to look at both sides, me versus you, the me versus we, in a sense, the you, and then in Uranus. So it's really in like the mythology, those birds in that whole, which is a dark melodrama, essentially represents discarding what we're conditioned with to embrace, because the father represents the traditions, the birds represent ideas, and this spells it out. It's right there. And yes, I like both what you're saying, to listen up, Saturn will help with that, because now it's in Neptune's realm.
Yeah. Justin, do you think that because the Saturn goes back into Pisces, that this kind of maybe skews the balance of power in the conjunction towards Neptune, as Neptune is the ruler of Pisces? Do you feel like maybe that gives Neptune a little bit more authority here?
Well, I would agree, yes. And I think, what we're dealing with there, I believe, is really what the collective believes. Right? What the collective believes. And Saturn is bringing some dose of reality to the collective. But at the same time, I think when it goes back into Pisces, I think we're not going to be moving forward. I think there's a part of the collective that's going to try to escape a little bit from this harsh reality as Saturn goes back into the Pisces. Let me lean back into escaping here a little bit from this harshness. So I think that we're not moving forward yet until Saturn goes direct again.
Yeah, more movies, more Netflix. Yes, indeed. Here we have on the 23rd is when it will be exact. Mind you, we've already experienced the equinox, and that'll be another show with Linda Berry, which is vibrational astrology, on the right then to explain on those energies. However, here we have the sun going from which also lasts for some period of time. This is not just overnight. This is part of that long period that's lending up the 2-week period. So we went from the thinking and connections, mental activity of Mercury, to our embodied ego, of our embodied self.
Yeah, and while we're looking at a progression of charts, this isn't a long period of time. We're talking about all of this happening between essentially yesterday or today and the 23rd of September. So we're talking about, I do think that this is going to be an era of, there's going to be a lot of events, there's going to be a lot of activity. And then I really do think that we come to, around the time of the equinox, we start really wrestling with the concept of national identity with that sun in Libra and how we relate to other people. And that is going to be really the thing that offsets this. So, we've already moved through Mars, we've moved now through Mercury, now the sun is here. Okay. This is when we start integrating this into, hey, this is where we're at now, and for people that follow politics very strongly, it's easy to keep up on the information, but there is a whole swath of people who have, who do not pay attention to any of this. But I do think around the equinox, things are going to get so, eventful that everybody's going to be paying attention.
Right. Yeah, I had to be nodding my head the whole time because I love
I saw that.
How you express the sun as the individual and integrating back into Neptune there, or that there's a relationship that I'm not so sure it's integrating necessarily back into Neptune, but it's definitely questioning its individuality, the individual, the sun being the individual with the collective. Something I want to say about the sun, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but this, I mean, the sun is a solar energy. So I think there can also be a brightness here. And the sun shining a little light on something and illuminating something here. Because the sun being a solar planet tends to bring a lighter and a brighter thing as opposed to the moon, which is lunar, right? And I mean, you, Robert, I'm going back to our conversation we had prior to this about plants, but this I think can be an illuminating period. Also, I think there can be a positive illumination about relationships in the collective, and people maybe having an aha moment here.
Well, if that's the case, it could also be that with the better side of Neptune, it always involves imagination and visions. So those hopes and dreams, yes, we do. There's always a shadow side, escapism, time out, let's see. But on the other hand, it's building, because it's not always an absolute straight ahead, but there's still this building of the dreams. Yeah.
And, the ruler of the sun is going to be Venus in Virgo. Okay. I think we're going to start seeing people in service more, like people are going to organize. They're going to take action. It's going to be more behind the scenes like Virgo does. But that energy of Venus in service is going to be feeding that sun in Libra, where we're trying to make connections. And essentially we're trying to escape this fight between the cultural zeitgeist and what's going on, what everybody, as Justin said, what everybody is kind of experiencing and thinking in the collective, and Saturn, which really does represent authority. So, I mean, we're going to be looking for new ways to connect, be in service as a response to what's going on with that pattern between the outer planets.
I like it. I'm thinking too with service, what a great advantage to learn how others think. One has perhaps in their head how it's going to help another, but in the process, one discovers hopefully what the other really needs or how it's useful and puts it into their own kettle of thinking and whatnot. And I might add, that with Mars, Adam Gainsbourg, who was just on, because it's another part of this is still that we're in a portal. I know this is abstract perhaps, but it still settles in that Mars in its descent is at one of the last gates before it goes, we don't see it, in its next cycle. And this happens to be the portal of service. So that's an interesting.
I might also point out something that's glaring that we haven't pointed out there is that every planet, with the exception of the focal planet, the sun, is retrograde at this point.
Yes.
So
Beautiful.
Uranus is retrograding. Hello, and Pluto's retrograding, and Saturn and Neptune are retrograding. All the outer planets are retrograding here. So there's definitely a sort of stopping and kind of going backwards and evaluating something here.
Yeah, and Mercury and Venus are in mutual reception. They're seeing and thinking of the others, and so that's our values and our thinking. And boy, what a kettle!
And also we're talking about individualism versus our relationships versus the collective. What is the effect of what's going on with Chiron and Eris going to have? You know what I mean? Like we're talking about like wounds of self, in retrograde as well. That is in the 7th house when this happens. I think that this is a very fascinating chart as well, because we're going back to that Sedna. There's kind of a need to sacrifice to break through the message. That will open up the situation a little bit more, and empower the disillusion of Neptune and Aries. And that Mars, what is the energy of Mars in Scorpio? It's a little more subversive. It doesn't want to necessarily be seen. I think that this is also a time when we're going to have some shadow forces at play, that are going to be moving things along in the undercurrent that may not exist until this happens. Because I understand the idea of a quincunx, but when you match it with another quincunx, that creates a resonance energy where those two kind of things that are kind of under the surface and annoying and like a rock in the shoe, they find a focal point and a mission. And the yacht is the mission, and the mission is going to have to do with themes of Mars in Scorpio. And those are very, again, under the surface, subversive. That's where we're putting our energy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because a quincunx means that, Mars is imbalanced with Uranus. It's imbalanced with Saturn and Neptune, and it's squaring Pluto. This almost feels like, to me, like, if you're talking about subversive, like there's some event that happens or something underneath the surface that brings some sense of like power right here, that just pow, because wanting to take Mars here is wanting to take action, but it's not doing it in a balanced way. There's some disruption here with it squaring Pluto and being in balance. It's not
power
right
versus
action.
no power. Yeah. So we have a few minutes here. All those are excellent, but there is one last. Venus.
Yeah.
Last on the horizon of the personal planets is mixing in with these outer planets exactly on October 13th. But again, there's a 10-day spread where it's in orb if you go through. But this will be exactly at 0 degrees, 12 minutes Libra, opposite Neptune. So we have this and one more chart. If we can forget all this on the right side, it was just to kind of look at how is the rulership, but look at how many through that rulership, it's interacting with everybody.
I think this is when it all kind of like congeals. Everything that's happening starting now up through October 13th, this is kind of going to be this is going to be a vibe shift. When that Venus hits that point as well. I think, Venus has been involved in everything up till this point, but now it becomes the focal point. And it's no longer in Virgo, which is of service. It's now in its domicile in Libra, where it wants to bring harmony.
Yeah, even in the U.S. chart, and I apologize, we've been really valuable conversation. I've loved your thinking as you discuss, both of you. But look at this. We have Venus, as you mentioned, the power, the importance of it, all this values that you've both been discussing between relationship, self, and others, along with our natal, whether it's tribal, however we want to look at it, how do we, it's...
Yeah, it's a fascinating time. And all of these kites are really just kind of like, again, they're going to be a big picture thing. What do you think, Justin?
No, I agree. I think... they just represent sort of, again, the collective, what's happening with relationships and how people are going to respond to relationships at that point.
Great.
Yeah. So here we are. That was like 2 months ahead. Let's see. This is August. Yeah. In about 2.5 months. It's a dynamic time listening to voices. I think that's one takeaway I've got from what you've both said, and the karma of it. Justin, you bring that up with the Saturn, which is always like, yes, we're in the retrogrades now. Yeah, it's only going to thicken. We're listening to.
Yeah, Saturn's bringing up old issues. We're seeing a repeat of history, of a cycle, and it's not happy. It's not fun. Saturn's not a like a nice pet you planet. No, it's going to bring in a dose of reality and said, you didn't take care of racism when you should, so we're going to bring it back into the collective again. So
yeah, indeed, it's really true. So we have new directions to meld into, as far as I'm just thinking of listening, feeling ahead. It's like a new venture, yes?
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I hope.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, folks, we're in the mix. Remember, there's ways to reach out and connect, and we'll go on this vibrant journey one way or the other. It's inner and outer. It's a lot of, we're still in the music's a little loud today. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Rob. And everybody, best to you.
Thank you for joining an insightful conversation on Talk Cosmos, the show where Sue Rose Minahan and her panel of guests awaken consciousness by connecting soul growth patterns with astrology's energetic cycles. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, same place, to continue your journey through the roots of the cosmic pathway.